surprised you didn't go, Gabe. I think Joe drops the title. I think this is Swerve's night. Like, Swerve is so hot right now, and they've missed the boat so many times on so many wrestlers when they are so hot. It's like, well, let's take a few weeks off. Put the belt on Swerve, and let's go. Let's ride that train right now.
Not a chance.
No.
Not a chance. No.
Isn't that a Swerve's chance?
Hangman's eating the pin from Joe. Like, what are we even doing here? No, he's eating the pin. He's eating the pin from Joe. That's the way this thing's ending. That's how the way you protect Swerve. He can keep going, and him and Hangman can do
going
their fight
where? If he's not going to win, where is he going? We got Wembley. It's Swerve and it's Ospreay for the title. Send me on that path right now.
Ooh, that sounds good to me. Oh, that's rich. I like that.
Yes.
I got no problem with that. But okay, just so on the surface. The three of us, and have we brought this up as a topic of whether or not Samoa Joe has done anything for you as champion? I mean, transitional champ Samoa Joe. Don't like that.
Right.
But then again, what about the banger matches? Like, I didn't expect to see Samoa Joe every week in the ring as heavyweight champion. Looks good in the suit. Top 10 out of 10 for a promo. Does a lot of talking, though. All right, not a lot of action, a lot of talking. And so I would imagine that Joe finds a way to survive this. But I like to see a little bit more in ring from Samoa Joe, too. If he gets out of this, again, great promo, but let's see a little bit more action against this large roster AEW has to offer.
Has the AEW championship weighed down just about everybody who's had it?
It's starting to feel like that. Like, I had to look it up because I didn't remember. It's been 2 months as champion. He's been in the ring wrestling twice since then. The Hook main event and that 6-man, what was that, last week? Yeah. And that's it. Those are the only matches he's wrestled in 2 months.
Well, again, I mean, he's a guy with, and I love Samoa Joe. I was rooting for Samoa Joe to be champ. I was expecting more out of this. I was expecting more out of the MJF run. I was expecting more out of the Hangman run. I was expecting more out of the Omega run. I was expecting more out of the CM Punk run. Now, like, granted, the CM Punk stuff was a lot of that's injury related, but like, it just seems like ever since they've kind of turned the page off the early champs, Moxley, Jericho, etc., like, it just seems like it's kind of weighted down. I'm like, okay, I'm waiting for something. It just hasn't popped and clicked. And when we talk about the growth of AEW, like, that's a big reason. Sure. Like, whoever becomes champion, we get excited for. And I mean, look, if they put it on Swerve on Sunday night, like, nobody's going to complain about that. He's clearly super over. And everywhere he goes, he yells, "Whose house?" Everybody jumps out of their chair to yell at Swerve's house. But, like, to me, then if the ultimate plan is Swerve, Ospreay, Wembley, yeah, that's a banger. But it's just going to drag ass until we get there. Right. Like, it just seems like that championship, for whatever reason, just they cannot figure out a way to get a champion hot. They can get the chase for the championship hot. They've done that a couple of times, but they cannot actually heat up and keep hot the actual championship and the top thing in the promotion.
See, if AEW is trying to slow play it like WWE does, there's a big difference between Roman Reigns and Samoa Joe. There's a big difference between the two because with Roman, guys, it's a story built around it. It's the bloodline. And all these different tentacles around the bloodline where you do see Roman. Yeah, he's not wrestling every week on Raw and SmackDown, but every other week you see him in a promo or you see him on social media. With Joe, not visible enough for me as heavyweight champion. Just not visible. I mean, coming down to the ring to do commentary for one match. You see him every now and then. You mentioned he's only been in the ring twice since he's been champion. Look, I'm not looking for like this workhorse champion like Orange Cassidy, but he's the heavyweight champion, damn it. I mean, he's supposed to be the hood ornament of your organization. And actually, honest to God, it's more Orange Cassidy, more of that in that role than Samoa Joe.
Well, I think you just hit the nail on the head. I think I just figured it out. Whoever they put the AEW championship on, and I think they have this problem as well with the AEW women's championship, like, you don't see him enough. Like, I know Toni Storm's the champion right now, but like in past women's champions, you just don't see him enough. They're not on TV. It was the same thing with MJF. Like, MJF wasn't a consistent presence really until he did the best friends angle with Adam Cole, which then became a not great angle with the Devil. But like, MJF was just missing from my television. You need to have some sort of constant presence. And whether it's been a good presence or not, with Roman Reigns, he's at least had representation. So you're always reminded of, hey, these are the champion's minions. Roman's still the champ on SmackDown. Like, even when he goes on his hiatus, like, there's still that presence. Sometimes it's been good, sometimes it hasn't been good. But there'll be times where you're like, oh yeah, that's right, Samoa Joe's champ. Oh yeah, I guess, Hikaru Shida's the women's champ.
Yeah.
There's just not enough presence from those top two champions from AEW.
Could it be as simple as just having to do with their pay-per-view schedule? Like, when you have the 2 to 3 months, and that might be changing. Tony said we might have 9 to 10 a year now, where they don't want to have, a match before the pay-per-view. So maybe that is as simple as that. Like, they're trying to build towards March, so therefore they're not going to give them every week. Like, we got the Hook thing, which we all agreed was awesome for both those guys, but maybe it's as simple as that.
I had to go back in the day with this, guys, because with Hogan and Flair, I'll use those guys because those were the champions back then. I mean, it wasn't a regular pay-per-view schedule for Hogan back then, but Hogan was always involved in something, right?
Right.
There he is in a Piper's Pit, and there he is in an interview, and there he was. And he may not have wrestled every week, but you did see him. At least he was visible. You knew who the champion was, right? But really the TV was built around the contenders for Hogan's championship. Ric Flair, every week, suit, heavyweight championship around his waist or on his shoulder. And Flair would talk it and just like, hey, man, I'm wrestling. I'm the champion. You got to come beat me. Let's take a look at all the challengers. So in that same vein, even though Samoa Joe or Roman Reigns aren't wrestling every week, you got to be visible. You got to keep reminding the audience. And this is why WWE does this so well more than anybody else. Gabe, you got to remind the audience, this is the man. The reason why you watch is not just because of wrestling and because of the great matches. It's because everyone wants that. The heavyweight championship. The whole centerpiece is around the heavyweight championship. And if you don't see the heavyweight champion, people will tune in and be like, hey, who's the champion? I never see him on TV.
And maybe that pay-per-view schedule is part of the issue. I think that's a good point, Brian, because I think after Joe won it at the end of December, right. Like I would say January felt like a pretty good month for Samoa Joe. He was present. Like it seemed like the challengers were stacking up. Like, maybe Joe goes up against Wardlow. Maybe it's Swerve. Maybe it's Hangman. Hook comes out of nowhere. And these people were coming out of the woodwork to be like, but then they settled in at the end of January. Okay, so now it's going to be Swerve and Hangman. So now we've kind of had this month knowing that those were kind of going to be the two or one of the two or whatever. And Joe's almost taken a back seat to the Fight Forever rivalry that Hangman Adam Page and Swerve have kind of picked up. So over the last month, we just haven't gotten enough Samoa Joe.
Right, that's the thing. Like he's a forgotten man in this three-way. Like we're more into Swerve and Hangman in that story.
That's fair. But hey, we go back to this again. You've got TV.
Right.
Oh yeah,
you got 5 hours.
You got plenty of time to put Joe on once a month, at the very least once a month, or a couple of times a month. Say for instance, he comes to ROH. Hey, I'm not gonna get that Honor Club. Oh, Samoa Joe's taking on who? Maybe I'll just consider it for once. Hey, he's gonna be on Dynamite. Hey, listen, they have so many people that Joe could take on to build Joe up as a wrestler. Again, he doesn't have to be out there like Orange Cassidy every week and be a workhorse. But if you're not on pay-per-view, Brian, you still have platforms to go on. Hey,
right.
you think Rampage could use a boost?
Right. And that's the thing. Like, just him with a mic in his hand is okay. Like, just give him a mic and let him go. Like, we know what he can do on the mic also. Like, let that happen. And it's weird seeing some of the comments right now of people saying, like, the Joe issue. Fletch No Sports, Samoa Joe is the best AEW can do as their champ. Have to change titles. Dan on YouTube saying Joe is so washed, can't believe he's the best AEW has to offer as champ. Like,
the guy was semi-retired because he had injuries. Right. Like, I mean, Joe can still go. Like, if you think Samoa Joe is washed as a wrestler, then you haven't watched the product.
Right.
Like, you just
but that's
you haven't seen him
watching
in the
AEW.
ring.
You don't have a reason to know that Joe is what Joe is. What we know Joe can do, they haven't shown him.
Or if you haven't watched AEW, last time you saw him, he was in a poncho at WrestleMania as a comment.
Which was mentioned last night.
Yes. Which was a hell of a line, by the way.
Yes.
It's a great line.
But
great line.
But again, if you haven't watched AEW, you say, oh, Joe's washed. It's because Vince didn't want to use Samoa Joe because Vince is a body guy. And he's like, I can never put that guy on my TV. Let him talk. He was healthy. They wouldn't utilize him. But Triple H now, if Samoa Joe's in WWE, you would see Samoa Joe against Bronson Reed. You'd see somehow Joe will be involved in the bloodline. Somehow, some way.
Well, we saw that. I don't know if Hunter convinced him, but that was when when Joe was on commentary and he was healthy and they're just using him for commentary, like, and then he left for like a month and then he came back, he went to NXT because Hunter was like, hell yeah, let me use this guy. So to that point, like, yes, Hunter would 100% use Samoa Joe in some form or fashion on WWE.
Joe in a Triple H WWE, I wouldn't rule out him versus Roman main eventing a show and Joe potentially winning. Like, remember, Vince fired Joe, and Hunter's like, no, like, can we rehire him? Like, he rehired him. Like, literally, was like, what, in a few months, like, hey, I'm going to go sign this guy. Like, just behind the old man's back. Like, that's what he thought of him. And I just don't get where the dynamic is right now. And I guess to your guys' point, like, I think he drops it Sunday. Him winning adds to him, makes him a bigger deal if, yes, he's pinning Hangman. But then what's next for Swerve?